In New York City, where Mayor Eric Adams last night signing off on this right to shelter rule, essentially suspending it. That was where you would immediately offer shelter to anyone seeking asylum. He says we don't have the resources to offer that at this point.
You're talking about the largest city in the country, calling themselves a sanctuary city, making sure now this is not going to be the haven for you. This is not going to be the place that you could come. What could happen? How many could come across the border? Those numbers continue to climb. Also, following breaking news out of Washington, cameras outside New York Congressman George Santos' office after he was charged with 13 federal crimes. Again, a live look right now. The embattled Republican denying these charges while refusing to step aside. Again, 13 charges, including wire fraud. I believe that was one of the biggest ones, obviously, and then taking state funds, essentially filing for unemployment when he was employed, taking money, again, from the state of New York.
George Santos says he will not resign. He will, in fact, seek re-election, although there have been calls by Republicans from the district he represents for him to step down. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy was asked about this just yesterday. He said he would not support a re-election bid for George Santos. Of course, Santos pleading not guilty. And he will fight this in court. We're going to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and again, calling this a witch hunt when he did speak to the press in terms of again, these charges, these indictments here. This came across yesterday. National Report broke the story to you live. Many congressmen were speaking out about this. Remember, he's been accused of lying about his education, his background, his family. And again, now one charge of that indictment is lying to Congress as well. There's a camera again outside of his office, continuing to watch that. Any form of response yet again, does it change? Does he still call it a witch hunt? This remains to be seen. Again, he's charged, but again, he has pleaded not guilty. We'll await to watch what happens there. And then there's this.
This woman, I don't know her. I never met her. It's better than what we're doing right now because we're spending money like drunken sailors. You're going to have millions of people pouring into our country right now at a level that nobody's ever seen before.
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple you're a nasty person.
Sparks flying at CNN's town hall event with Donald Trump last night. The former president, Donald Trump, taking questions from voters, along with CNN host Caitlin Collins, on key issues facing the nation today, like the economy and immigration.
Yeah, and one voter asking Trump about his economic policies if he is reelected.
What is the first thing you would do to help bring down the cost to make things more affordable?
Drill, baby, drill. You know what that is. So we were energy independent. We were soon going to be energy dominant. And nobody had ever done what I did. We got oil down to $1.87. Actually, it fell lower than that in some cases. We had to save the oil companies. The price was getting so. We were doing incredibly.
And again, there's a lot to cover here. We will continue to follow it. In case you missed some of these moments here, we'll catch you up. But someone that didn't need catching up was New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, quick to criticize what the former president had to say about the E. Jean Carroll case.
I know you said earlier that you will not comment on the platforming of such atrocious disinformation, but I would. I think it was a profoundly irresponsible decision. I don't think that I would be doing my job if I did not say that. And what we saw tonight was a series of extremely irresponsible decisions that put a sexual abuse victim at risk, that put that person at risk in front of a national audience, and I could not have disagreed with it more. It was shameful.
The Congresswoman there criticizing CNN for hosting the event. Joy Behar of The View tweeting this out. Pathetic all around. Thank you, CNN, for nothing. Good night. And Sean, if you were online and on social media, the people who live on Twitter, they were not happy with CNN. And again, this is the left-leaning voices, right? They were not happy with CNN for hosting Donald Trump. He had been on the network since 2016. They didn't like the idea that he would be answering questions by some GOP Republicans or undeclared voters. And they didn't like parts of how Caitlin Collins handled the town hall event.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I watched it live last night. The way it was covered, the way it was moderated. Look, Donald Trump is a tough guy. He's a tough guy to moderate, right? And Caitlin Collins did what she could. She handled it in a very, very calm manner. A lot of the questions came from the audience, and that's what a town hall is supposed to be. Now, she did jump in her own time to try to get her questions in, but yes, the former president essentially bulldozed right over it, answering questions and, again, making his own explanation. I'll say this about CNN. They made this choice to put the former president on. He is right now the front runner for the Republican ticket for the nomination for 2024, whether you like it, whether you don't. And with him comes half the country. With him comes 74 million votes that he got in 2020. You can't isolate that. That's the end of democracy there. Now, the other complaint, too, is that how do you not fact check on the fly? Well, they did. If you watched right after the town hall that they hosted, they had Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper immediately, along with a panel of 18 people all around the table, going at it. So they were able to do that. Do you think that they made the wrong decision, the right decision? You're going to have to cover the Republican nominee or the potential Republican nominee or the front runner at some point. And if you're CNN, like you've been bleeding viewers, which they have, this may be the right way to go about this. As far as journalistic integrity goes, they fact-checked him right after this town hall.
All the panelists, though, almost all the panelists, Congressman Byron Donalds was sitting on one of the panels.
Right.
So he stood out as a different perspective. But everyone else basically sounded like the old CNN. The talking points, right? The criticism of the former president, the lack of understanding that half of the country could be in favor of this guy and could support him and might be willing to vote for him again.
They looked so sad, by the way, too. I don't know if you noticed that. As soon as they cut to Anderson and Jake Tapper, it was just, they were so appalled. And so is everyone online. This is something that I pointed out yesterday about many Democrats were very unhappy about CNN hosting this. Nevertheless, it'll be interesting to see what that does for the ratings as well.
It was Trump being Trump on CNN. All right, we'll keep an eye on those ratings, bring them to you when they come in. Live look here in El Paso, Texas. As we mentioned, Title 42 set to expire 11:59 Eastern Time tonight. Border officials using Title 42 nearly 3 million times in the past, and now they're expecting a massive tidal wave of migrants to attempt to pour across the border.
We have video here of migrants trying to cross the Rio Grande River into Texas. So remember, this isn't just crossing a river on the way. This is the illegal crossing, right? This is you crossing from Mexico, or rather migrants crossing from Mexico to the United States, not through the legal process. National Report has been showing you scenes like this for months, and it is dangerous. The White House saying this: the U.S. will not accept asylum seekers who travel through other countries unless they can prove their asylum request has already been rejected. Migrants caught crossing illegally, we're told, will not be allowed to return for 5 years. They would be forced to turn around. They would also face criminal persecution. And it's not just Texas, as you know. Check out this aerial footage. Again, this is from the border separating Tijuana, Mexico, and San Diego. And you can see all the people, again, ready to cross over into California, this time even setting up temporary shelter. President Biden was asked about the crisis yesterday. Here's that.
Can you expand on what you meant when you said there will be chaos at the border? For how long?
Well, we've had chaos at the border for a number of years. We have to fully fund the border security effort. We have to fully fund. Look, the purpose of what we're doing now is making legal immigration more streamlined, illegal immigration shorter term improved.
Mr. President, what is the plan B if the asylum rule is blocked in court?
We'll figure that out with this block in court. Look, I asked the Congress for a lot more money for the Border Patrol. They didn't do it.
But politicians have been warning about a massive migrant surge for months, some even years. Democratic leaders of big cities repeatedly voicing their concerns.
When we have a growing humanitarian crisis that we expect, that the federal government expects is going to only worsen, I have got to deploy the resources that I need to handle it.
This is in the lap of the President of the United States. The President of the United States can give us the ability to allow people to work. We get ready to lift Title 42. A plan can't be, let's hope. That's not a plan.
Chicago simply does not have the infrastructure or resources to continue humanely providing for migrants. Hundreds of migrants are temporarily staying in police stations while they await more appropriate housing.
By the way, these aren't border mayors when you're listening to this. This is a New York City mayor. This is a Chicago mayor. Despite that, buses are still heading to cities like New York and Chicago this week. You have them coming out who have been, again, champions of sanctuary cities, right? Signing that right to shelter, essentially not allowing or blocking that, essentially not allowing those to shelter that are coming across the border. This will not be a city for that, from the New York Mayor Eric Adams. Chicago essentially saying they don't have the infrastructure for it. But what gets to me is if you read the statements from the local border towns, one of the statements from the mayors down there saying they're preparing for this like they are preparing for a hurricane in terms of how many people are going to come over and what could happen in their city. El Paso essentially becomes a resting place for anyone coming across illegally, because I think no one is talking about this part. Where are they going? 10,000 a day, and if they're just being led across, where are all these people going? You're talking about hundreds of thousands of people within a month, if not more. They have to have a place to go. How far can they get? That's the biggest question, and a lot of the biggest hit areas, again, places like El Paso.
Yeah, I mean, a state of emergency has been declared in the Democratic-run city of El Paso, Texas. The president saying, you know, this is a challenge we've had for years. Well, you've been in office for years now, right? Mm-hmm. We've known this moment was coming. Finally, we've wrapped up our pandemic era COVID-19 emergency. It ends today, by the way, in case you were waiting for the government to clarify that for you. But it really does impact Title 42, and that's where we're seeing it. We knew it was happening. Now they're doing this. You know, you got to stop. You got to apply online. You got to stop in these other countries applying for asylum before you make it to the U.S. or you'll be turned back away. Has that message gone out to the folks who are on the other side of the river right now? Is that clear?
Not to the smugglers, at least, according to the administration. They have been notifying those wanting to cross that they can come this date. Despite what's being told that the border is not open, according to the secretary. We're talking to several border mayors, by the way, so you don't want to miss that, including the mayor of McAllen, Texas. That's coming up next. Regulations being pushed by states like Tennessee and Texas. So Melissa McCarthy, Jesse Eisenberg, comedian Sarah Silverman, just to name a few other Hollywood stars who came out in support of the event. None of them quite as passionate as Charlize Theron for that. Many parents have pushed back against this, because if you go to drag performances, obviously, and we push to watch certain programming, many adults argue that some of these drag shows are not meant for children. Clearly, these actors believe something different.
And the adults who express concerns are the ones who are voting for state lawmakers who are voting on these bills to prevent this from happening in public. That's what we saw in Tennessee, right? Mm-hmm. That's how state laws work. Where you live, you get to vote and elect your lawmakers, and then they work on legislation to represent you as the voter or the resident of Tennessee. So it's very different in California, maybe where she lives. I'm not sure where she lives, but California state laws are very different than Tennessee laws. And of course, you're going to see differences for states all across the country. It's a story, though, that continues.
Yep.
Let me be clear. The lifting of the Title 42 public health order does not mean our border is open. In fact, it is the contrary. Our use of our immigration enforcement authorities under Title 8 of the United States Code means tougher consequences for people who cross the border illegally.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas on the defense yesterday during a press conference previewing the end of Title 42. Again, that will expire tonight. As we take a live look here in Matamoros, Mexico, in his remarks, Secretary Mayorkas insisted the southern border is secure while placing blame for the current immigration crisis on Congress. Mayorkas claims Congress has allowed the situation on the border to deteriorate for decades now. Javier Villalobos is the mayor of McAllen, Texas. It's right near Matamoros. Sir, welcome, and thank you very much for coming on. What are you expecting for the end of tonight? Again, the expiration of Title 42.
We do expect kind of a surge, as everybody pretty much knows. We know there's in excess of 10,000, maybe 20,000 Haitians and different immigrants right across in Reynosa. So we're preparing as best as possible. We've been through this before. Fortunately, right now, things had been a little more stable. I know things had shifted more to Eagle Pass and Laredo, but once again, here we go. We're seeing this more in Brownsville, and definitely starting even yesterday, we see an increase already here in McAllen area.
When it comes to resources, can you describe what you've got sort of in your arsenal when it comes to processing an anticipated surge?
Well, certainly. Well, what we do, first of all, we shouldn't be involved in immigration issues at all. It's not our issue, but now it is our problem. But we do have a very good communication with our federal, state, and local authorities, including our county, our governor's office, and of course, Border Patrol. We've set up, and as we have before, Ansalduas Park, Catholic charities, where we know we can process up to possibly 1,500 a day. The concern is if it exceeds that amount within a couple of days, that's where the problem is. We've been able to logistically take care of all the issues before, and we hope we can again, but we are a little concerned.
Could you share insight, sir, once these charities assist with processing, because again, as you point out, it's not really your town's initial job. Where did these migrants go? What happens next?
Okay, fortunately, as we told people, they don't stay here. They pass through our area. So once Border Patrol takes them to Catholic charities or to Ansalduas Park, Catholic charities tries to fix up all the logistics as far as travel, as far as whether it be bus, whether it be through an airline. And then they're out. And it had been working real good before. Now, the issue I think we're having now is that some of the immigrants are coming without money. And this is a concern we have. We are 20 days away from hurricane season. And unfortunately, the biggest hurricanes are usually in the beginning of the season. So we hope, or actually we pray that we don't have those issues. But if people can't leave because they don't have money and the numbers are in excess, I don't know what we're going to do. Sure. We have to think about it as kind of as stated, as maybe a hurricane or something, but it's going to be, or it can be disastrous.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard cities and towns declare states of emergency just ahead of the end of today. Other big city mayors are similarly experiencing what you're describing, sir. We've got some sound bites of, again, these are bigger cities than McAllen, but they're also dealing with a similar challenge. Here's that.
When we have a growing humanitarian crisis that we expect, that the federal government expects is going to only worsen, I have got to deploy the resources that I need to handle it.
This is in the lap of the President of the United States. The President of the United States can give us the ability to allow people to work. We get ready to lift Title 42. A plan can't be, let's hope. That's not a plan.
Chicago simply does not have the infrastructure or resources to continue humanely providing for migrants. Hundreds of migrants are temporarily staying in police stations while they await more appropriate housing.
Now, sir, these cities receive millions of dollars in assistance funding. These sanctuary cities, so-called sanctuary cities. Do you have a message to the mayors of D.C. and New York and Chicago who feel as though they're overwhelmed with the situation, while you are also expressing the same thing?
Well, we do, but it's similar. It's not necessarily similar issues because they pass through here. They don't stay here. They can leave within one day. They do. As a matter of fact, I tell people, go to McAllen, go around and find me an immigrant, and you can't. You generally can. We're not having the issues, or we never had because logistically we've been able to do it. The issues that Eagle Pass had, the issues that El Paso had, we've been doing great because of what we've been doing. Logistically, it's worked. We went from the 7th safest city to the 6th to just a few months ago named the 3rd safest city in the country. We want to keep it that way. So we're going to do whatever's possible to assist the immigrants to go through here. It's not our responsibility, but we're going to do it. Our main concern has always been public safety for our residents and, of course, for the immigrants.
Could we end on this? Just in your experience, how you would characterize the immigrants' sort of emotional status, how they're doing when they make the. It can be a very difficult and challenging journey to get to the U.S. southern border. What have you seen?
It has, and actually, it breaks your heart a lot of the times. It really does. I see the issues we have, or the concerns that a lot of our community has, but then you see their faces, and then you think about what they've been through. It's a difficult situation, and like I guess the other mayors stated, hey, this is a federal issue. We need the federal government to step up, whether it be the Senate, Congress, the administration, and take care of the problem. It is not a municipal issue. It shouldn't be thrown on our lap. Unfortunately, it has, and we'll do whatever we can to keep our people safe.
All right. And we, of course, wish you luck and safety for your town. McAllen, Texas Mayor Javier Villalobos, thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Staying on the border, in a new memo exclusively obtained by the Daily Caller, federal authorities are being directed to rapidly release migrants before Title 42 sunsets, a move that is being slammed by former ICE Chief of Staff John Fear. It says this, quote, this administration should have been building bed space for the last 2 years. Instead, they've chosen to reduce bed space and are now going to be releasing illegal aliens into the U.S. to temporarily accommodate new illegal aliens arriving into the U.S., unquote. Jenny Terra is an investigative reporter for the Daily Caller News Foundation, and she joins us with that information there. Jenny, thanks for joining us. Based on the conversations that maybe you've had with your sources, if we could start with maybe a broad scope here, how many migrants are anticipated to be released into the U.S. without knowing possibly where they're going? Is this happening as we speak? Does this change at 11:59 tonight?
Right. So this policy outlines that ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is being instructed to rapidly release, in fact, migrants who have positive claims of credible fear. Credible fear is often known as a loophole to get into the country. So actually, while Title 42 has existed, migrants have actually claimed credible fear and been let into the country, even if they're amenable to Title 42. I've heard this happen many times after speaking with migrants. So individuals who have claims of credible fear that are screened by federal authorities, they will be released by ICE, like you said, to clear bed space, which is already very scarce among the agency. Not only that, but for the past few years under the Biden administration, the agency has been already releasing migrants who have criminal histories if they're not egregious criminals. So the priorities of ICE under Biden have been to only enforce deportations and arrests for those who are severe threats to the country, to national security, border security, public safety, things like that. So this is just another layer of that story.
Secretary Mayorkas recently spoke about that in mentioning that a credible, if you mention a credible source of fear that you would be able to get over. But he also mentioned the fact that smugglers are telling those that want to cross that if Title 42 expires, essentially this would be the time to come over, something he calls false information. Talking about that, there's this massive influx of migrants at the border that are concerns of having narcotics coming across the border once this is lifted. In fact, more than 1,800 pounds of fentanyl have been seized at the border since October of last year, according to CBP. We know that's been a major killer here in the United States with poisonings for so many Americans, sadly. And this is one of the consequences of some coming over unchecked, coming across illegally. Talk to us about this and how this problem could increase after Title 42 expires at 11:59 tonight.
Right. So you mentioned the DHS secretary and his ramping up of this campaign to target the cartel's rhetoric and smugglers' rhetoric. But in the meantime, migrants are coming across, they're getting released, and they're telling their families that are south of the border that that's happening. And that's really the message I think that's resonating with migrants. And so the focus being on the smugglers and putting out these PSAs, which they revealed yesterday about crossing the border illegally, that it has consequences. But the stories that they hear from their friends and family members who end up in places like New Jersey and New York after crossing the southern border, that tells a different story to them. So the administration's focus is very different from the reality, it appears. And it'll be interesting to see what happens as this unfolds today. But for the past week, Border Patrol capacity has been overfilled. Their processing centers have been over capacity in 7+ sectors of the southern border, and there's been over 20,000 in custody for the past week. That's just before this policy ends, so there will be something to watch as this unfolds with the policy ending.
If New York City and Chicago, the two largest cities in our country, can't handle this type of influx, what
Campaign, which the CEO said wasn't a campaign, but it still got the message out. The stock was down about 2 points yesterday. It's down 5% over the past month. Stephen Moore is a former Trump senior economic advisor, and he joins us now. Stephen, talk to me about AB. What's going to happen next?
Well, I'm surprised their stock hasn't fallen more. This is probably one of the most catastrophic campaigns, or whatever they want to call it, in modern times. I mean, you don't criticize and make fun of half of your consumers, and that's exactly what Anheuser-Busch has done. So I don't think they're out of the woods here. I don't think Bush is a good buy right now, because they really haven't distanced themselves from this ridiculous ad campaign.
Also, Stephen, talking about big retailers like Bed Bath & Beyond, we've seen them fold shop recently. Now Best Buy going all in on its membership program with their sales down, as reported by CNBC. Could this be the next big retailer to go down?
I can't say about Best Buy because I haven't looked at their numbers, but I will say this, that a big problem with the retailers right now, as you all have been reporting, is they can't do business in the big cities any longer. In San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in Baltimore, you're seeing these, stores, whether it's Walmart or Best Buy or Targets or grocery stores, having to shut down their operations and take big losses because of crime, and the customers are not safe, and they allow basically people to come into some of these stores and just walk out, shoplift. And the Chicago mayor said that that's a societal problem. It's not a problem with the shoplifters. So I think crime is a big factor for these big box retailers.
No doubt about it in San Francisco, right? A number of stores have cited that. The fact that customers weren't visiting the area, and also employee safety, at least in Whole Foods in San Francisco there. Stephen Moore, appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Hey, another story making waves right now. Unionized Apple Store workers in Maryland apparently want to start asking for tips. So keep in mind, put yourself in an Apple store. You're spending potentially thousands of dollars on a new laptop. How about a 20% tip on all that?
Well, you may be familiar with this when you get some coffee or something and you pay with a card. That screen then prompts you to tip. You could choose your tip, 20, 15, 10%, that little screen down there. There it is. Sometimes you feel guilted into tipping people who are looking right over your shoulder, watching you on that little screen. Are you going to push anything? Or even the worker potentially watching you push the no tip button. How does that make you feel? Maryland Apple workers want tips. Look, I was a bartender. I was a waiter. We worked for tips. I made $2.13 an hour. That was the standard because you worked off tips. This is different in European nations. But here in America, you work for tips in the restaurant business. But you are servicing them. You are serving them. This is different. You are selling. Right? The only thing I could think of in Apple, and many have been there, right? This is the biggest selling phone of all time, is they put your screen protector on there for you, right? They provide that service for you. But that's a part of the customer experience. As far as as far as anything else goes, you have to pay for that. I forget what they call it, like the Genius Bar, right? If you want all your information transferred, you buy that. That's that's not a free service. But either way, I don't know. That's a tough one to ask, especially in a time like this where more people are spending money than they have before.
You worked in the service industry. I had background in the retail industry, so it kind of fits. It was a clothing store, but still, the idea you're selling products. You're on the sales floor, and you're trying to, help out the customer and make a deal. Now, I didn't get an additional tip based on how many pairs of jeans I sold.
Well, you should have.
Right?
Should have pushed for it.
And it makes you wonder, well, what does this mean for what's expected of your employee, right? Are they expected to do the job without the tip? Will they be a good employee? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of changes what you're looking for when you're hiring someone. If a tip is not guaranteed, would they show up to work? Would they treat the customer with respect? Would they go the extra mile and say, let me find you the matching shirt?
And I'm pretty sure commissions come with sales positions as well.
For certain
too.
stores. For certain stores,
yeah. So you would wonder why a tip would be involved in that. Either way, that's what they want there. So if you're out in that area, maybe